Hello everyone. Today I want to share a bit about my recent trip to Russia, mostly around Moscow and St. Petersburg, since I didn't have much time to explore further. Oh, and by the way, the Russian visa process is quite an interesting story. I'll get into the details later. This trip truly left me with so many unexpected impressions. From the weather and food to the people, some things matched my expectations, while others were completely different. Alright, let's dive in. So, let's start with the Russian visa story, since it's the first step and one that made me sweat a little. Before the trip, I thought getting a Russian visa would be similar to applying for visas to other European countries. You know, fill out an online form, submit some documents, and wait a few weeks. But nope, it's a bit different, both interesting and full of unexpected twists. The basic process goes like this. First, you need an invitation letter from Russia, usually provided by a tour company or hotel there. Then you fill out the visa application online on the Russian embassy's website, print it out, attach a photo, and gather your passport, travel insurance, round-trip flight tickets, and trip itinerary. Sounds simple, right? But when I started doing it, I ran into some small traps. For example, the itinerary section, they want details of where you'll be and what you'll do each day. Meanwhile, I'm the type who just goes with the flow, so making up a detailed plan was exhausting. Then there's the invitation letter. I booked it through an intermediary, and they sent me a scanned copy without the original, which made me nervous about whether it'd be accepted. Luckily, it all worked out in the end. The biggest surprise came when I submitted my application. I went to the Russian visa center in Hanoi, expecting long lines and crowds, but it was practically empty, just me and a few others. The staff there were super serious, asking all sorts of questions like, why are you going to Russia? How long are you staying? Who's paying for this trip? I answered with my heart pounding, terrified I'd say something wrong and get rejected on the spot. But there was a funny moment. One of the staff saw me fumbling and said, relax, just tell the truth. After that, I waited about 10 days, and when I finally got the visa stamped in my passport, I was so relieved I could have cried. Tips for anyone applying for a Russian visa? First, make sure you have all your documents ready. Don't miss a single thing, because they check everything carefully. Second, start early. Don't wait until the last minute and panic. And finally, if possible, use a reputable agency. They handle everything from A to Z, saving you a lot of stress. Oh, and double-check your visa type. I've heard of people mixing up tourist and business visas and getting turned back at the airport. Once I got to Russia, wow, so many things were way beyond my imagination. I'll break it down bit by bit. Weather, food, people, everything has a story to tell. Before going, I'd heard that Russians are amazing at handling the cold. Like, minus 20 degrees Celsius in thin jackets, strolling around like it's nothing. I'd seen photos online of handsome guys and gorgeous girls posing in light clothing amidst snowy landscapes, so I figured they must have some kind of superpower. But nope, when I got there, I realized Russians are human too. They bundle up like crazy when it's cold. I arrived in Moscow in winter with temperatures around minus 10 degrees Celsius, and everyone on the streets was wrapped in fur coats, scarves, and wool hats. No one was dressed lightly. One snowy day, I tried standing outside for 5 minutes and was shivering uncontrollably, while older Russian folks walked by unfazed, but on closer look they were wearing 3 to 4 layers. The lesson? Don't believe everything you see online. Those glamorous photos were probably just for show. Everyone fears the cold like the rest of us. I noticed locals are super prepared for it though, with anti-slip boots and thick gloves. They've mastered living with it their whole lives. Now the food, it blew me away. Before the trip, I thought Russian cuisine was all about grilled meat, boiled potatoes, and vodka, simple and rustic. But no, it's way more diverse than I expected. First off, the soups, like borscht, a red beet soup with sour cream, which sounds odd but tastes amazing. Then there's beef stroganoff, tender beef in creamy sauce, perfect with noodles or rice. I also tried natural fruit drinks like cranberry or raspberry juice, tart and sweet, warming me up in the cold weather. Now the food, it blew me away. Before the trip, I thought Russian cuisine was all about grilled meat, boiled potatoes, and vodka, simple and rustic. But no, it's way more diverse than I expected. First off, the soups, like borscht, a red beet soup with sour cream, which sounds odd but tastes amazing. Then there's beef stroganoff, tender beef in creamy sauce, perfect with noodles or rice. I also tried natural fruit drinks like cranberry or raspberry juice, tart and sweet, warming me up in the cold weather. But the biggest difference? Portion sizes. In the US or Vietnam, a meal is usually just enough to fill you up. In Russia, oh my goodness, they bring out gigantic plates. Once I ordered pelmeni, small meat-filled dumplings, thinking they'd be like Vietnamese dumplings. But they served me a huge bowl full. I was so stuffed I could barely stand. Compared to the US, Russian meals are like one feast to last the day, while American portions are lighter and split into smaller meals. Money matters in Russia surprised me too. Before going, I knew international cards like Visa and MasterCard wouldn't work due to sanctions, but I figured cash would be fine. Turns out Russia's practically a cashless society. Everywhere uses cards, but only local ones like the MIR card. I brought dollars and euros to exchange for rubles, but hardly anyone took cash. Thankfully, a friend helped me download a Russian banking app, load money into it, and pay with my phone, like Alipay or WeChat in China. For tourists, if you're heading to Russia, get a MIR card beforehand or bring enough rubles in cash. Exchange them at the airport. Otherwise, ask big hotels. They might offer alternative payment options. But overall, expect some inconvenience if you're not used to it. This was a real headache. I used Google Maps, but it kept messing up. One time I was standing in Moscow's Red Square and the GPS showed me somewhere in the suburbs. At first I thought my phone was broken, but locals told me, yeah, GPS here glitches a lot. Probably the government jamming signals for security reasons. It made sense given how sensitive Russia can be about these things. The fix? Ask locals. They're super helpful. Just learn a few basic Russian words like GD, where, or kak, how, and they'll guide you patiently. Some even walked me part of the way. So, my advice, learn some Russian phrases or carry a paper map. Don't rely too much on GPS. Before the trip, I'd heard stereotypes that Russians are cold and standoffish, always looking grumpy. When I got there, it was partly true, but not entirely. In Moscow, I met some incredibly kind people, like a taxi driver who stopped to help me when I was lost, no extra charge. But there were rude ones too. Once I asked for directions and the guy snapped, "I don't know, go away." In St. Petersburg though, people were much friendlier and more open. Maybe because it's an artsy, touristy city. Compared to other countries, Russians remind me of Germans in their seriousness, but they've got an Italian-like warmth once they warm up to you. The cold stereotype probably comes from their directness. They don't beat around the bush like Americans with polite smiles. Russian women and dating. This is something people are super curious about. Before going, some guy friends warned me that Russian women are gorgeous but might scam foreigners for money or green cards. When I got there, I didn't see that at all. Yes, Russian women are stunning. Pale skin, tall, well-dressed. But they're just normal people, not out to hunt foreigners. I chatted with some at a cafe and they were friendly, even shyer than women in places like France or Italy. My take? They're more independent and resilient than many Western European women, probably because life in Russia can be tough, and they've learned to fend for themselves. Compared to Europe, Russian women seem more practical about romance, less of that Hollywood fairy tale vibe. Okay, let's wrap up this Russia trip. Honestly, there were so many surprises that made me go wow. The visa process wasn't as simple as I thought. You've got to prep everything carefully. Then, arriving in Russia, I realized the weather isn't some superhuman cold tolerance like the internet claims. Locals bundle up and shiver too, just like me. The food, not just meat and potatoes, it's rich and varied, from steaming soups to melt-in-your-mouth sauces. Payments were a hassle with no international cards, but it was cool to see how fast Russia's gone cashless. GPS was a mess, forcing me to ask for directions the old-school way, which showed me how some locals are amazingly kind while others can be a bit prickly. And those rumors about Russian women? Overblown, they're beautiful and strong but not the schemers people make them out to be. Every moment broadened my perspective. Moscow felt busy and intense, while St. Petersburg was gentler and more welcoming. Overall, Russia wasn't what I'd pictured. It's strange yet familiar, harsh yet warm in its own unique way. This trip taught me some great lessons. First, don't trust everything online or stereotypes. Weather, people, you name it. You've got to experience it yourself to know the truth. Second, prep thoroughly for any trip. Visa, money, backup plans for stuff like broken GPS. It's crucial, or you'll get lost fast. Third, talking to locals is the quickest way to understand a place. Asking for help and directions made Russia feel less cold than I'd thought. It's just their way of expressing things. Most importantly, I learned flexibility. Going to Russia and relying on tech or home habits will trip you up. You've got to adapt fast, from payments to navigation. Figuring things out in such an unfamiliar place was truly memorable. Alright, I've rambled long enough, haven't I? Thanks for listening to my Russia trip diary. I hope my experiences help anyone planning a trip there or just curious about the country. Got questions? Ask me, I'll answer everything. See you all in the next video. Bye-bye.